Councillor Osborne.
Question number 1 to the leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank Councillor Osborne for his question. Part A of the question, there is a list of 15 initiatives that this council has taken, working with a number of authorities over a long period. To that, I'd like to also add that this council has worked with the Western Riverside Waste Authority since its creation, and almost always well. We've also worked with the Central London Forward, where we are working with the majority Labour boroughs, delivering skills and training across the central part of the capital. And most importantly for this council, that we have given leadership and worked closely with many, many boroughs, both in London and beyond London, on the 2M group, fighting the expansion of Heathrow. So this authority is well used to working in partnership with boroughs across political divides and elsewhere to get the best deal for citizens of Wandsworth, which is our watchword in this matter.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor. Can I ask the leader if he will join me then in congratulating the newly elected chair of the Joint Crematorium Board, one of the joint boards we participate in, which for some reason is not listed, perhaps on a technicality, I'm not sure.
I'm sure I can put Councillor Osborne right on the technicality bit. I think it's actually a separate authority, and it is a bit like not what you asked for, and hence Wandsworth Riverside Waste Authority wasn't, Western Riverside Waste Authority was not on it as well. So that's perhaps helps you. I would say that, going up in smoke is sort of one of those things that those of us choose to do that will end up doing it. And if I were to go up in smoke, I want to go up in smoke at the North East Surrey Crematorium Board. And if the chairman of that authority was a member of this authority, then I think I might feel well.
Two to the leader, please. Thank you. Yes, question number 2, yes.
Yeah, I thank Councillor Osborne for his question. The answer is set out. I mean, I just thought I'd sort of share with the council the kind of my experience over many years on planning. One of the obvious truths of planning consultation is that those who are for a scheme generally never write in to say they are for a scheme, and those who are against a scheme always write in to say they are against a scheme, often with a number of aliases if they can get away with it. And actually, when I've detected that there is a group of people writing in for a scheme, inevitably there is somebody behind that, and often the developer has psyched up people to do it. So I think responses to consultations is always one of those sort of self-selective things, particularly when what we were asking residents was that do they want this council that they have trusted for 35 odd years to deliver them value for money and find the most efficient ways of providing services. The chances are that for 35 years they've been asked that question and they thought, oh, well, that's all right. It'll carry on as ever.
Supplementary. Will the leader agree with me then that perhaps it is time for us to overhaul our system of consultation with the residents of the borough, in light in particular of one particular response on our website. This proposal, it's about the proposal to put AstroTurf on Falcon Park. This proposal is outrageous, it will get no support, it should be scrapped, and those who conceived it voted out of office. It's from a Bullingdon Club billionaire called Nat Rothschild, who is clearly objecting to the proposal there. Is it not time for a proactively managed dialogue with the residents of this borough rather than the system we use at the moment?
I thank Councillor Osborne for his supplement. It's interesting, isn't it? On the day when the Chancellor announces the stopping of lifetime non-dom status, Councillor Osborne keeps company with Nat Rothschild. Maybe we all sort of do things that we are not supposed to do. As far as the proposals at Falkland Park is concerned, they are still being talked about, and there will be inevitably be an outcome in due course. This particular consultation was, in my view, a very quick straw poll type of a consultation. And of course, if Councillor Osborne has ideas beyond quoting from self-selective websites on how to improve interaction with residents, then I am happy to listen to him.
Supplementary.
Councillor Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader, though, agree that it is probably best that we try and maintain the costs of such exercises in a proportionate manner, and also ensure that our resources actually are more devoted to fulfilling the services for our residents?
I thank Councillor Dawson for his supplement, and he's absolutely right that the primary purpose actually is to deliver services at kind of costs that people can afford, and with the efficiency and effectiveness that people are used to, rather than interminable consultation, which probably doesn't inform the outcomes that we need.
Councillor Sallier.
Question number 3 to the Leader.
I thank Councillor Sallier for a question. I think it is very clear from the answer to question 1 that this council has forever, for a very long time, worked with other authorities to obtain what I call the best service for our residents. If there is something that is good for our residents, we have never stepped backwards in making sure that we grab that opportunity and get the best deal for ourselves, for our residents. And that is exactly what I intend to do, whether we are in this relationship with Richmond or not. And then that is the fundamental part of the discussions that we have had with Richmond, is that we retain our sovereignty, we retain our freedom to do things that are best for our residents. Both boroughs will ensure that in working together and also separately whenever necessary, the watchword is we must get the best deal for our citizens.
Supplementary.
Councillor Sallier.
Could the Leader comment further on any assistance he's received from either of the opposition groups to move the negotiations forward with Richmond?
Now that's an interesting supplementary, isn't it? Because my answer would be no, and they would say, but if we had a chance, we would. But I think the truth of the matter is this, that in negotiations that we're involved in, it is about building trust, building relationships, and exploring each other's both commitments and limits. And I think those things are better done without a kind of an audience of others. I can't imagine that all sorts of tricky negotiations that happen both in government and in other life, that they work best with an audience. I think they don't. But of course there is a role for opposition to comment and contribute, and that's what overview and scrutiny function is about, and I'm sure that they take every opportunity to contribute to that if they can.
Councillor Ambash.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased with the Leader's answer so far in relation to shared services. I wonder if he might go a bit further. Could the Leader confirm that he will join in exploring and delivering shared services irrespective of political ideology? So as well as shared services with his political friends in Richmond, will he explore similar services with Hammersmith and Fulham, Merton and Lambeth, our neighbours?
Thank Councillor Ambash for his supplement. Of course, it's good. I've known Councillor Ambash for a very long time, sporting different colours. So it's a bit like if you go to a race course, if you blink, you might find that somebody else is owning the horse. But having that point made, just refer him to the answer that I gave to Councillor Osborne, is question 1. Item 1, shared pension services with Waltham Forest, Camden. Neither of them are of the same political persuasion. Shared fraud investigations with Sutton and Merton. Neither of them are of the same political persuasion, because Councillor Ambash would be familiar with both of them, because they were both persuasions that he's familiar with. IT disaster recovery with Merton. 29 London boroughs, and I'm sure there are some that are of different political persuasion. Commissioning due diligence work on examining the potential of joining shared regulatory partnership with Merton and Richmond. Another mention of Merton, another mention of Merton, Sutton. It goes on. I mean, Lambeth, I've always said It is about delivering for the citizens of Wandsworth the best services at the value for money that they can afford and in the most effective way. And it doesn't matter which authority we work with, and our record shows that we are not that fussy.
Second? No. Councillor Grimston?
Thank you. Let's start by saying what a great pleasure it is to see you there, Mr. Mayor. I did see that photo of you with the bow and arrow, so I do promise you'll get an easier time from me than your predecessor did. Question number 4, please, the Leader of the Council.
I thank Councillor Grimston for his question. And the answer is brief, but it's there. I mean, I have to say that any member of this council is able to go to a committee and make a contribution, and often people do. It is about the way in which that contribution is made, both in spirit of construction and good dialogue, and mindful that there are members of the committee who have a greater right than, in a sense, visiting contributors to a committee. I am sure that within the bounds of those rules and good manners and so on, there can be ways in which people with some contribution to make on this issue, some expertise to share, they can do it either formally at committee or informally in other ways, because I know for sure that senior officers of this council would be ever ready to hear constructive dialogue with members who have something sensible to contribute. Equally, I am happy when time allows to spend time and discuss ways of taking this council forward. It is in our interest and our duty. It is our duty and it's in our interest that we should make that possible. But it also goes hand in hand with kind of good manners and making sure that those who have full rights of committee are not out of the conversation.
Supplementary. I welcome the words and the spirit of the leader in that reply. I would say, however, that does he recognise that there is just a danger that the line between a majority party, quite rightly, taking final decisions for which they were elected to do, which no one in this chamber would argue against, can stray over into a sense that scrutiny, rather than being welcomed as a contribution to development of policy, is seen as a kind of privilege that councillors have to qualify for through a set of quite rigid laws. There is much more that can be offered than simply asking questions at committees when it comes to developing what I think are very complex issues, particularly around shared services at the moment. And that at present, is he absolutely convinced that the experience of all members of this council is available to at least take part in that discussion, while, as I say, absolutely recognising the final decision, quite rightly, should be that
Councillor
of the Cabinet
Grimston,
and the majority?
Little bit, thank you.
I think I'll be actually quite honest about this. I think that this is an area of work that we have undertaken, which of course is incredibly important to the two councils. It's important to this administration and of course administrations to follow in this council and elsewhere. So it is not in the long-term interests of this party or any party to ram through a change that will be a change for a much longer period. At the same time, it is not about sort of seeing this process as them and us, but it is about process of cooperation and partnership, and there are ways in which it could be influenced rather than done always simply through a committee thing. It is, I'm sure there are colleagues on my side who would say, is it a criticism or is it a contribution? And that, of course, they are entitled to ask that question. And of course, and I'll be absolutely honest, Councillor Grimston, with your permission, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, there will also be colleagues who would feel that they have equal right to make a greater contribution to this discussion than Councillor Sina and myself are making, because they too have expertise. And there will be colleagues on my side, particularly my side, who would say that there should not be a kind of way in which somebody who they thought was a colleague is now no longer a colleague, gets extra buns for not being a colleague. I mean, absolutely honest. I'm not mincing my words. You know exactly what I mean. And so I think this is a way of working our way through. If you have something constructive to say, there are ways open, and I'm sure they will remain open.
Thank you. Councillor Hogg.
And may I thank Councillor Hogg for his question. It has always been an odd thing, isn't it, that properties built and purchased with public purse were available for people, tenants to buy, when the right to buy on council properties was created. And then came a situation where housing associations, which expanded with public purse benefits, denied their tenants the right to buy. So it is quite right that the government tackles the principle of inequity, that people living in homes built or purchased through public purse should have the same rights. Of course, there are details to work through, and those details will get worked through.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hogg. You're on. You're off. You're on. You're off.
I thank Councillor Hogg for his supplementary. And I'm sure he follows the various bits of housing press and housing pressure groups, and he will be aware that the Mayor of London has made his position very clear as to how he sees this policy unfolding in London. It's a policy that the Mayor's statements are comforting, and I think a number of boroughs in London have welcomed it, and I, for one, would welcome that. It is important that whilst we extend the right to buy, that we ensure that both London as a whole and boroughs like ours retain the ability to discharge whatever statutory functions there are. And if there are to be diminution of supply side on the housing, then the government needs to tackle the demand side on the housing for us who are ultimately responsible for discharging those statutory functions. So there are some difficult and hard dialogues to be had with the government, and inevitably when those dialogues happen, we will make sure that citizens of Wandsworth and their interests come first. But I have to say that home ownership is an aspiration that we are committed to make sure that those who will have it have every help in achieving it.
Supplemental, Mr. Mayor. Madam
Councillor
Mayor,
Cooper.
I, for one, welcome the prospect of our local housing association tenants having the right to buy extended to them. I also welcome the commitment the government has made to provide funding for replacement housing. Additional to our own programme of development, could I ask what the forecast level of completions of affordable housing are this year and how this compares to the previous?
Well, I thank Councillor Cooper for her supplementary. And I just put this in the context. We started, for example, in Nine Elms with an absolute commitment to delivering 15% affordable homes on site-by-site basis. We have now not only achieved that 15 on a site-by-site basis, but actually grown that percentage and edging up to 20 and more percent on on the new sites coming through. The watchword is that if you work hard and grow the cake well, then everyone has a bigger share, and that's the ethos of this council. So 14-15, 375 homes will be delivered, and there are 1,500 further homes in the pipeline. And then all that is achieved actually through hard work both by officers and members, but also foresight that in encouraging and getting development through, you are essentially delivering more housing, which is what London and the country needs.
Councillor Lua.
Question number 6 to the leader.
Oh, what joy, Councillor Lua. Thank you very much for your question. It's one of those kind of questions that gives you an opportunity to say lots of things. The answer says it all. It reminded me of something that I thought I'd share with the Council. Some of you remember that a while ago there was a sculpture marking the atrocities in New York, and was looking for a home, and he didn't have a home to go to. And we offered them a temporary home in Battersea Park, which was a great success. And because it was such a great success, I have written to the Labour Party if they would like a temporary home for the Edstone, which could be a feature of some pilgrimage for many in Battersea Park. I haven't had a reply yet, but I promise to share the reply with the Council.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor. 72,000 people voted Conservative on May the 7th. Would the leader join me in agreeing that this is a fine indication that the people of Wandsworth support Conservative governance at all levels, both nationally, in London and in this borough?
Thank Councillor Leo for his supplementary. Of course, both the Member of Parliament for Putney and the Member of Parliament for Battersea not only grew their majorities, but also their vote share, and both of them got more than 50% of their vote share, buttressing their position as proper anointed speakers on behalf of the residents of Battersea and Putney. Now, to say that Sadiq Khan, who tried very hard to battle on many fronts across London, perhaps for a battle yet to come rather than the battle he was supposedly fighting, found that his vote share didn't grow very much and his percentage share didn't grow very much, and of all the leading lights, he perhaps had not a good night. Not such a good night, of course, which resulted in him calling those who voted against him, I suppose, challenging whether their parentage was legitimate or not.
Second supplementary. In all seriousness, I would have thought that actually if anybody was going to lament the return of a Conservative majority, it might be Wandsworth Council. Surely what this means is further cuts for this council on a budget which has already had to see tens of millions taken out of it over the last few years.
I thank Councillor Daly for his supplementary, and of course it seems like an invitation to live beyond your means. And it is precisely that kind of thinking that we can continue to have a budget that is not supported by real money, that has got this country into the mess it has come to, and it has got this council and many other councils in that mess. But earlier there were some mutters about it is not true. And I have to say to any lawyer who says it is not true, well, see you in court, sue me and I'll tell you but it's true or not. So I'm assuming that Mr. Khan will be reaching for his legal friend's advice on that matter.
That ends the time for questions to the leader.